The golden prairie stretches endlessly, bathed in the fading light of a dying sun. The wind whispers through the tall grass, carrying the distant howl of wolves. A lone wagon creaks down a narrow dirt path, its wheels sinking into the soft earth inside. Two women sit in silence, their faces hollow with exhaustion. Hannah, once a farmer's wife, now a widow, grips the reins with stiff fingers. Her knuckles are cracked, her dress dust-stained, but her spine remains unyielding. Beside her, Eliza, young and delicate, trembles beneath a thin shawl. Her hands rest in her lap, fingers clutching at the frayed edges of her sleeve as if holding onto the last remnants of security. The road ahead stretches empty and merciless. Behind them nothing. No home, no family. Their in-laws had seen to that. Your husband is dead, Hannah, and with him your place in this family. The words still rang in her ears, bitter as bile. Her husband had been killed in a skirmish, a fight with the Sioux over stolen cattle. But it was not the Sioux who had cast her out. It was her own blood. His family, who saw her as nothing but a burden, a widow without use, an extra mouth to feed. And so, in the pale hours before dawn, with nothing but a mule and a wagon of meager supplies, she and Eliza had been driven into exile. Now, the night presses in, a thick veil of black swallowing the horizon. Hannah tugs on the reins. The mule snorts in protest but slows. "We'll stop here," she says, her voice hoarse from the cold. Eliza doesn't answer. She hasn't spoken much since they left. Hannah climbs down first, her boots sinking into the damp earth. She rubs her arms against the cold and glances around. The land is too quiet. The prairie, vast and open by day, feels like a trap at night. No walls, no fences, just darkness stretching in every direction. She pulls out a flint and steel, striking until a small flame flickers to life beneath a pile of dry grass and twigs. Eliza finally moves, stepping down from the wagon. She hesitates before settling near the fire, her hands trembling as she holds them to the warmth. Hannah watches her sister's face, pale and drawn, eyes darting nervously into the night. "We'll be fine," Hannah says. Eliza swallows, nods. But Hannah can see the doubt in her eyes. The fire crackles, throwing long, flickering shadows across the ground. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote yips, answered by another. Eliza stiffens. "They're close," she whispers. Hannah grips the handle of the old rifle resting beside her. The one thing her husband left behind. One shot, maybe two, if she's careful. The wind shifts. The mule shudders and jerks its head, a sound not the wind, not the coyotes. Something else. A footstep. Hannah snaps the rifle up. Heart hammering. Silence. The fire crackles. The shadows dance. But the air is too still. Eliza stares at her, wide-eyed, then a whisper of movement. The firelight catches something in the darkness. A glint of steel. Hannah throws herself forward, knocking Eliza to the ground just as a blade whistles through the air, slicing where her sister's throat had been a second before. A figure looms above them, wrapped in shadow. Another emerges from the night. Then a third. Bandits. The first man chuckles, flipping his knife in his hand. Teeth missing, eyes sharp like a wolf's. "Ladies," he drawls, tilting his head. "You're far from home." Hannah scrambles to her knees, rifle up, but hands grab her arms, yanking her back. Eliza cries out, struggling against rough hands, but the second man, younger, crueler, holds her firm. "Easy now," the leader says, stepping forward. His boots crunch on frost-covered grass. He crouches, eyeing Hannah like a wolf sizing up a wounded deer. "Ain't safe for two women alone out here." Hannah's breath comes fast, her pulse a deafening drumbeat in her ears. The man reaches for her, fingers trailing along the collar of her dress. A whisper cuts through the air. A thud. The leader gasps, staggers back. An arrow protrudes from his chest. Silence. Then chaos. The man holding Eliza jerks, an arrow piercing his throat. He gurgles, drops her. The third bandit stumbles back, reaching for his gun. Another arrow slices the night, embedding deep into his skull. He crumples, Hannah grasps Eliza, pulling her close. Shielding her, the remaining bandit stumbles backward, clutching his wound. His eyes, wild and frantic, search the darkness. From the trees, a figure emerges, a Sioux warrior. Tall, broad-shouldered, his long dark hair braided over one shoulder. His bow still raised, an arrow already notched, aimed steady at the dying man. The bandit's breath rattles, blood bubbling at his lips. He knows he is dead, but the warrior doesn't lose the arrow. Not yet. Instead, he watches as the man stumbles backward, turns, and vanishes into the dark. Silence returns. The wind howls, carrying the scent of blood and fire. Hannah's breath shakes. She looks at the warrior, their eyes locking. Eliza, still trembling, grips her sister's arm. The Sioux warrior watches them for a moment longer. Then, slowly, he lowers his bow. He speaks, not in English. A single word. Hannah doesn't understand it, but she understands the meaning. Follow. Fade to black. The wind howled through the trees, whispering through the tall grass as Hannah and Eliza followed their silent protector deeper into the unknown. The warrior moved like a shadow, his steps sure, his gaze ever watchful. The night swallowed them whole, the prairie stretching in all directions, endless and unyielding. Eliza clung to Hannah's arm, exhaustion pulling at her frame. The cold bit through their thin dresses, and though neither spoke, the fear between them was thick as fog. Their rescuer did not offer comfort, only a path forward. The firelight came first, flickering between the trees, then the scent of smoke and roasted meat. Hannah's breath caught as they emerged into a vast clearing. A Sioux village lay before them, alive with the hum of voices, the glow of fires, and the rustling of hide tents swaying under the wind's touch. Figures emerged from the shadows, some stepping forward, others hanging back watching. Dozens of eyes locked onto them, filled with wariness, curiosity, suspicion. The warrior, their savior, did not pause. He strode forward, head high, his grip firm on the bow at his side. Hannah squared her shoulders, willing her pulse to slow. She had faced rejection before. She would not cower now. Eliza, however, pressed closer, whispering, "Hannah?" What if they? A voice boomed through the village, cutting through the murmurs. A man stepped forward, taller than the rest, his hair streaked with silver, his stance one of authority. Hannah knew instinctively this was the chief. The warrior spoke, his tone steady, his words foreign to their ears. The chief's eyes narrowed, his gaze sliding over Hannah and Eliza like a blade, measuring, weighing, then a sharp response. The warrior's jaw tightened. He gestured back to them, his tone laced with something Hannah recognized. Defiance. A murmur rippled through the gathered crowd. A woman clutched her child closer. A warrior folded his arms, unimpressed. Then, the chief took a slow step forward. His gaze settled on Eliza, then Hannah. A long silence stretched between them, thick as a storm about to break. Then, at last, he spoke. His words were few, harsh, and final. The warrior clenched his jaw. Then, with a single motion, he gestured for them to follow again. Hannah hesitated, but the weight of the village's gaze pressed heavy upon her. Eliza's hand in hers was ice cold. With a final glance at the towering chief, she stepped forward. They were led toward the farthest edge of the village, where a small tent stood apart from the others. The warrior pulled back the flap, revealing a bare interior, a fire pit, a single rolled blanket, a simple mat of woven grass. It was clear. They were guests but not welcomed ones. The warrior motioned for them to enter. Hannah turned to him. "What did your chief say?" His expression remained unreadable. Then, in slow, careful English, he said, "You're not wanted here." Eliza flinched. Hannah's stomach tightened. Still, the warrior did not leave. He lingered for a moment longer before adding, "Stay until morning." Then, he was gone. Inside the small tent, Eliza wrapped herself in the single blanket, her breath shuddering as she whispered, "Hannah, they'll make us leave. We'll die out there." Hannah did not respond. Instead, she watched the fire's embers glow softly, shadows flickering against the tent walls. She had seen it in the chief's face. They were a burden, an intrusion, a mistake that should have been left to the wild. Morning would bring their fate. Sleep did not come easily. The village awoke with the scent of smoke and cooking meat. Outside, voices hummed, the rhythmic beat of drums carrying through the crisp morning air. Hannah and Eliza emerged from the tent, met instantly by curious gazes. Children peeked from behind their mother's skirts. Warriors watched with guarded eyes, but it was the warrior, the one who had saved them, who stood waiting. He was not alone. Behind him, the chief stood, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. The warrior spoke first. "My name is Chaska." It was the first thing he had offered that wasn't an order. Hannah held his gaze. "Hannah," she motioned beside her. "My sister, Eliza." Chaska nodded once. Then he turned to the chief, exchanging a few tense words in their language. The chief sighed. Then he spoke to them. "You leave," he said, his accent thick but his meaning clear. "Tomorrow." Eliza's breath hitched. Hannah clenched her fists. The chief continued. "You bring danger. Sioux do not trust you." Chaska spoke then, his voice firm, challenging. The chief's expression hardened. He stared at Hannah, then at Eliza. His gaze lingered. Finally, he exhaled through his nose. "You stay." A ripple of surprise coursed through the onlookers. Even Chaska's posture stiffened slightly. The chief continued. "One moon, no more." Then, without another word, he turned and left. Chaska lingered. His eyes met Hannah's, a silent warning. One moon, then they would be cast out. But Hannah was not one to waste borrowed time. Days passed. The village did not embrace them, but it did not drive them out either. Eliza remained quiet, but Hannah found ways to prove they were not helpless. She watched the women as they worked, skinning hides, drying herbs, weaving cloth. She saw an older woman struggle with a wounded child, his arm swollen with infection. She stepped forward. The woman hesitated, uncertain, but Chaska watched. He said something low in his language, and the woman, though reluctant, allowed Hannah close. With careful hands she worked. The boy's fever broke by morning. The woman did not smile at her, but the next time they crossed paths, she did not turn away. Chaska saw it all. One evening, as Hannah sat outside the tent, he approached. He studied her for a long moment before asking, "You heal?" She met his gaze. "I try." His lips pressed into a thin line. Then, after a pause, he sat beside her. It was not an invitation. It was not friendship. It was something else. A quiet understanding. Hannah could feel it in the way he looked at her, not as an intruder, not as a burden, but as someone worth watching, someone worth knowing. The days would pass too quickly. One moon was not enough time, and the longer they stayed, the more tangled their fates became, because even as she watched Eliza and Chaska exchange quiet glances, as she saw the way her sister's breath hitched when he spoke, Hannah knew their place here would never be safe. And their greatest danger was no longer the wilderness. It was the hearts they could not control. The moon hung heavy in the sky, its silver glow casting long shadows across the village. The firelight flickered in the distance, but the air between Eliza and Chaska burned brighter. They stood near the river's edge, hidden from prying eyes, the rush of water masking the thunder of their hearts. Eliza had not meant to follow him here, or perhaps she had. Chaska had turned away from the fires without a word, his shoulders tense, his steps purposeful. She had watched him, torn between caution and something she dared not name. But when he disappeared into the trees, her feet moved of their own accord. Now, here they stood, neither speaking. The night was alive with sound, the chirping of insects, the whisper of wind through the leaves, the distant murmur of the village settling into sleep. But between them, a silence deeper than the earth itself. Chaska's hand hovered near his knife, a habit of vigilance. His breath was steady, but his body remained rigid, as if battling something unseen. Eliza swallowed, the weight of the moment pressing against her chest. "You avoid me." Chaska's eyes flicked to her, dark and unreadable. "You are not of my world." His words were firm, yet his voice betrayed something else. Regret, want, fear. Eliza stepped closer, the space between them shrinking like a noose tightening around them both. Then why did you save me? A muscle in his jaw twitched. Because I could not watch you die. She exhaled, a bitter laugh escaping. And now, his breath hitched, but he did not pull away. Now I cannot watch myself fall, Eliza. Felt it then the breaking point, the moment where choice crumbled and instinct ruled. Before either of them could stop it, she reached up, fingers grazing his jaw, tracing the line of his face as if memorizing something she knew she would lose. Chaska stiffened. Then, with a sharp inhale, he closed the distance. His lips met hers. Rough, desperate, a battle and a surrender all at once. The world disappeared. The village, the warnings, the eyes that would see them as a crime. A betrayal, none of it mattered. For one breath, for one heartbeat. Then he pulled away. His breath was ragged, his hands trembling at her waist. This cannot be. Eliza did not speak. She knew it, but the knowing did not make it easier. A branch snapped in the distance. Chaska turned sharply, hand flying to his knife. A shadow loomed beyond the trees, then a voice. Cold, unforgiving. So it is true. Chief Motto stepped forward, his presence sucking the air from the night. Behind him, warriors emerged from the darkness, their faces carved from stone. Eliza's stomach dropped. Chaska's stance shifted, a silent, instinctive move to shield her. Motto's gaze was ice, sharp and merciless as it fell upon his son. You shame us. Chaska did not flinch. I have done nothing dishonorable. Motto's expression darkened. You have given your heart to an outsider. Eliza's pulse pounded. She could feel the weight of their stares, the judgment pressing like an unbearable force. Chaska stood taller. She is no enemy. Motto's lip curled. She is not one of us. A tense silence stretched between them. Then, Motto spoke, his voice like thunder. You are my son, but if you choose her you are no longer Sioux. Eliza's breath caught. The words struck like a blade. Final and cruel. Chaska's fists clenched, but his voice remained steady. You cast me out for love. Motto's eyes flashed with something unreadable, pain, perhaps, or merely the burden of duty. I cast you out for weakness. Eliza saw it then, the breaking of a son before his father. Chaska inhaled slowly. Then, with purpose, he removed the knife from his belt and dropped it at Motto's feet. A single act. A severing. Gasps rippled through the warriors. Motto's gaze remained locked onto his son, but the finality was clear. Chaska had made his choice. Eliza's chest ached as she watched the moment unfold. This was not victory. This was exile. Without another word, Motto turned. The warriors followed, leaving them in the silence of their own ruin. Chaska's breath was measured, but she could feel the storm inside him. He had given up everything. For her, Eliza reached for his hand, but he stepped away. We leave at dawn. His voice was empty, stripped of everything it once held. Eliza did not argue. There was nothing left to say. The village slept as they gathered what little they had. Hannah watched them with cautious eyes, but did not ask. She had seen enough cruelty to recognize its aftermath. Eliza tried to ignore the ache in her chest, the hollow space where something precious had been ripped away. They left as the first light bled across the sky, shadows stretching long across the earth. The village did not wake to watch them go. They were ghosts now. And in the vast emptiness of the prairie, they had never felt smaller. The wind howled across the plains, a relentless force sweeping through the open land, carrying whispers of war. Chaska walked ahead, his shoulders rigid, his steps unyielding. Beside him, Eliza kept pace, her heart heavy with the weight of exile. Behind them, Hannah followed in silence, her gaze flitting to the darkening sky as if searching for an omen, a sign that the world had not yet abandoned them. They had not spoken much since they left the village. There was nothing to say. The line had been drawn, the choice made. Chaska no longer belonged to his people, and Eliza knew he had lost everything because of her. She wanted to speak, to offer some fragile comfort, but the words lay dead on her tongue. There was no comfort in exile, only the emptiness of the land stretching before them, an endless expanse of uncertainty. Then, on the horizon, smoke. Chaska stopped so suddenly that Eliza nearly collided with him. His head snapped toward the distant columns, black against the pale sky, rising from the direction of the village. Eliza's stomach twisted. Hannah inhaled sharply. No! Chaska's body tensed like a bowstring. Then, without a word, he turned and ran. Eliza's breath hitched. Chaska, but he was already moving, a blur against the golden grass, his long strides devouring the distance. Eliza hesitated only for a moment before she followed. Hannah cursed under her breath but did not stay behind. The wind screamed past them, carrying the scent of burning wood, the acrid stench of war. As they crested the final hill, the village came into view. Flames licked at the edges of the lodges, thick smoke coiling into the sky. Shadows moved through the chaos. Warriors, locked in deadly combat. Eliza's heart slammed against her ribs. A rival tribe, an ambush. They had come in the night, under the cover of darkness, striking without mercy. Chaska didn't hesitate. He drew his knife and charged forward, disappearing into the fray. Eliza's breath came fast, panic clawing at her throat. This was not her fight. This was not her home. But Chaska, he fought for them still, and Hannah was already running toward the wounded. Something inside Eliza snapped. She wasn't useless. She wasn't a burden. If this was the only way to prove herself, then so be it. Her hands found a fallen bough. The wood was worn, the string taut. A quiver of arrows lay beside a fallen warrior. She did not think. She moved. Eliza knocked an arrow, her fingers trembling only for a moment before instinct took over. A warrior lunged toward a wounded Sioux man. Blade raised, Eliza let the arrow fly. It struck true. The man staggered, crumpled. She exhaled sharply, already reaching for another. The battle was chaos, a blur of movement and sound. Chaska fought with the ferocity of a storm, his blade flashing in the firelight. Hannah worked swiftly, pressing cloth to wounds, ignoring the blood staining her hands, and Eliza fought. She did not know how long it lasted. Time blurred, stretched. The only thing that mattered was survival. Then, suddenly silence. The enemy fled, their dead littering the ground, their wounded dragged away under the weight of defeat. Eliza's hands trembled around the bow, her breath uneven. She had killed. She had saved lives, and the Sioux had seen it. She turned, her gaze locking onto Chief Motto. He stood amidst the wreckage, blood staining his arm, his eyes fixed on her with something unreadable. Then, his gaze shifted to Chaska. Father and son stood on opposite sides of a war neither had wanted. The silence stretched between them, heavier than any blade. Then Motto spoke, his voice rough with exhaustion. You did not have to return. Chaska did not flinch. I could not watch them die. A slow exhale, a shift in the air, subtle, but there, Motto's gaze swept the battlefield, the wounded, the fallen. Then, finally, he looked at Eliza. She held her breath. His face did not soften, but neither was it cold. She fights like one of us, he said at last. She saves like one of us. The words were a judgment, a verdict. Chaska did not speak. He waited. Then Motto's gaze found his son once more. You are my blood. You have always been my blood. His voice lowered. If you stay, you will not be cast out. Eliza felt her heart lurch. Chaska's hands curled into fists at his sides. And her? Motto's gaze did not waver. If she stays, she is no longer an outsider. Eliza's breath caught. It was not an embrace. It was not an apology, but it was acceptance. The warriors who had once looked at her with suspicion now watched her with something else. Respect. Chaska turned to her then, his expression unreadable. His hand reached for hers, hesitant, waiting. Eliza did not hesitate. She took it. Motto exhaled slowly, then turned away, his presence like the wind there, but already shifting into something new. The fires burned lower. The dawn began to creep over the horizon. Eliza tightened her grip around Chaska's fingers, her heart steady. They had fought for this, and at last they had won.